So, starting to shoot this movie, and I've been telling everybody how much I love this camera and everything, but there's definitely some stuff that's been bothering me too. So, I mean, I wouldn't call them deal breakers or anything like that, and I have the camera now, and I'm going to keep it, definitely. And I mean, I love it, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, there's some stuff that does kind of bug me, like the button on the back, like on the upper left-hand corner of the back of the camera, that switches you from record mode to playback mode. Why is that on the upper left-hand side of the camera? Like, why do I have to fiddle with everything? Most of the buttons where I play and stop is on the right part of the button on the wheel, and why do I have to reach across? On my Sony camera, I didn't have to do that, so that kind of bothers me. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I gotta have two hands on the camera, I gotta reach across, and it's just kind of annoying. Like, I thought I would get used to that like really fast, but I didn't get used to it. It's annoying. It's annoying. And the other thing is that the screen, I don't really know if I like the flip out screen, the fully articulating. It's not fully articulating really, because honestly, on my Sony, I was able to flip up the screen, and it was kind of all in alignment with the lens and where I'm shooting, and it just felt a lot easier, like a lot more compact, a lot more organic. And so now I got to deal with, also I feel kind of vulnerable out there with the screen, like I could possibly break it. And with the Sony, it just felt more stable, like just flip up. And it pulled out and up and out and down, and I mean, I guess I got used to it, whatever. I mean, I don't hate this screen, although the Sony screen actually looks better than this screen. I mean, I know that sounds crazy and a lot of people might not agree, but I notice I have to keep this screen on +3 all the time. And it just, like I use the waveform all the time, but it takes up like, a third of the screen. I can't resize it, and I use that a lot to get my exposure. And so that's kind of a pain. Like, I don't know. I have an external monitor, but I hardly use it because I don't really like to add stuff to my camera, if I don't have to. And so, yeah, I'll use it if it's absolutely necessary, but this one, it just doesn't really look as good. And I find it really hard to match the monitor on the back with the viewfinder. Like, I can't get them to look even remotely the same, which is weird to me. I'm just not used to that. One of the reasons I bought this camera is because it had a viewfinder, and now I find that I'm hardly ever using it because it looks so different than the back screen. It kind of screws me up a little bit. And the Sony, even though they weren't the greatest monitor and viewfinder, they relatively looked the same. Like I figured it out, with regards to my exposure, because I knew what it looked like. With this, it just looks different, so I don't really like that so much. I mean, it's weird. I mean, I'm grateful for the fact that it's an actual touch screen. I mean, that's a huge thing, and the Sony didn't do that. So I'm glad I can make all those adjustments right on the screen, and sometimes I actually even forget because I never had that before. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, I wish it looked better. I wish I was able to resize the waveform monitor. I also find that the manual assist, the colors that I use, they're not as, as prominent as on the Sony camera. When I'm manually focusing, and I pick red generally, I don't know. Sometimes when my lens is wide open, I don't see any colors at all. They just don't come up, which is kind of weird. They don't change when I go into record, like some people said that they would. I don't notice that, but I just noticed that it's not as easy to manually focus in that way. But the fact that I can have manual focus assist where it magnifies the screen, that is a huge plus. I like that, because on my Sony I could only do that when I'm taking still photos, but with this I could do it with videography, with making movies, and much better. So I like that. But yeah, I wish I could see those colors more prominently. That kind of bugs me a little bit, And I guess the only thing that really bothers me other than all of that, and again, those aren't deal breakers or anything like that. I mean, bottom line is I love the way this camera looks, you know, and I'm really enjoying shooting in Vlog, although I'm still trying to decide whether or not to use Vlog for my film, because I don't know if I want that kind of workflow for 2 hours of a movie, but that's a whole other story. But it does kind of bother me that I'm much more limited in my lens selection for this. You know, like I can't just go out and buy a cheap lens if I want, you know, and cheap, I mean inexpensive, because with Sony I had a lot of really good inexpensive lenses because I had such a huge variety from Sigma and Tamron and Viltrox and, you know, Rokkor and Samyang and everybody. With Panasonic, it's like I want the 18mm f1.8 lens, but I also want the 24. But I ain't spending like, you know, over $2,000 for those two lenses, because I'm still not sure I'm going to stay in this ecosystem, because it's still kind of limited in that way. You know, like if I was able to have that type of flexibility, I think for me, that might be the only deal breaker. Yeah. That might be something that pushes me away eventually, because that's really frustrating. Like right now, I'm using the kit lens on this camera, 20-60, which I think is an awesome lens actually. And I have the 50mm f1.8, which is cool. It's good, really good lens. I like it a lot. And I have a couple of vintage lenses, these Minolta lenses that I adapted to it, and they work fine. Although, like I said, when I have them wide open, it's hard because they're manual lenses. It's a little bit more difficult to manually focus on myself. You know, when I'm behind the camera, it's not as big a deal, I find. And, you know, I guess I could use the app more too. That would probably help, although the app wouldn't help with a manual lens. So there's that. But the fact that I can't go get a Viltrox 20mm for $400 or $500, that I have to spend $1,000, $1,200, something like that for a, you know, 18mm or a 24mm lens, that kind of bothers me, you know? I mean, I can get the 24-105 probably used for $700 or $800, something like that maybe, and that's, you know, that's cool, that's not bad, but it's f4. And I mostly work with primes, and I'm just saying I would prefer to have the option. That kind of bothers me. So yeah, I mean, I could get into some of these cinema lenses, but most of them are pretty expensive. I mean, there are, I know there's inexpensive cinema lenses available, you know, the TT Artisans or something like that, or 7 Artisans. Those are supposed to be good, but I would like to have, you know, a modern lens that is autofocus. Even though I don't use autofocus all that much, and even though it's not that important to me, I do use it in a certain kind of way. You know, like I use it to lock in initially when I'm manually focusing, which is kind of cool. I can press that button on the back, the AF button, and I could like immediately lock in on what I'm manually focusing on, which is awesome. I also don't like that I can't do that when I'm actually recording. On my Sony camera, I could do that. Like on my Sony camera, I could be in manual focus and I could be switching back and forth. Like when I shot a documentary last year, and I was shooting all these kids, you know, these middle school kids. It was a jazz workshop and a hip hop workshop and all. It was amazing. And, you know, kids are moving around a lot. And I was able to, you know, lock in. When I felt like I was losing somebody, I was able to like move the camera, lock in, and then get back into manual focus. And with this camera, for some reason, I can't do that. So that bothers me a little bit, but not a deal breaker, but, you know, it does bother me. And, you know, yeah, I mean, I have often said definitely the autofocus on this is great. You know, it's good, and it's cool. You know, I'm using it all the time for YouTube videos and stuff, but I don't find it to be usable for a real project that I'm getting paid for. Like, I'll use it for YouTube because I could shoot it 15 times if it screws up, you know? And generally it doesn't, you know, it works really well, but I wouldn't count on it, that's for sure, you know? And I'm telling you, I just bought this camera, right? If Panasonic comes out with an S5 Mark II and it's got phase detect autofocus, and they don't give me that in a firmware update, I might leave. Then I might sell this camera and go back and maybe get an A7 IV. Something like that. I might do that because that would piss me off a little bit. Even though I got a great deal on this camera, you know, I'm assuming that camera is going to be either the same or less than a GH6 or A7 IV. And so if they're putting the new autofocus, rumored, if they're putting that new autofocus into that camera and they don't give it to people who just bought the S5 and the S1 and the S1H, I think that's messed up, because then they're literally trying to get people to abandon the cameras they have and upgrade to a new camera instead of just growing their product and hoping to have a bigger part of the marketplace. Because, you know, that's the other thing right now. You know, if I go on a set, chances are everybody on that set is going to be using Sony or Canon or Blackmagic. Almost everybody, you know, other than those who have Red cameras and Arri Alexas and things like that. But I'm talking about the mirrorless people. They're going to have an FX3, an FX6, A7S3, Canon, you know, like they're not going to have, probably not going to have a Panasonic. And so Panasonic should, you know, I really believe that if they improve their autofocus because of what they put in these cameras, and because actually this camera that I'm using is equivalent to an A7S III without the autofocus, without question, maybe better in certain ways, like more able to, like, you know, how about anamorphic? Come on. I got time code in this thing and I bought it for, you know, $1,700. I mean, that's amazing. So they need to give us a firmware update. Otherwise, yeah, you know, I mean, I'm going to finish this film with this camera, definitely, and I'm not complaining, that's for sure. You know, like let me just say, I am grateful to have any modern camera right now. I mean, I don't care if it's Fuji or Nikon or Canon or Sony or Panasonic or whatever, even Olympus. Like, I am happy to have any modern camera because they are incredible. Blackmagic Pocket 4K, you know, build that out. You know, if you can't make a good project with any of these cameras, you need to look at yourself. But I'm just saying, for my overall workflow, it's really not about the final product, because you can get a great final product with all these cameras. It's more about how you work, how you want to work, you know, your workflow, like I just said. So that would kind of piss me off a little bit. So see what happens. But really, those are the only things that bother me about it, you know. Otherwise, I love it. To be honest with you, it looks great. It's fun to shoot with, and it's, you know, honestly, it's been fun for me to, you know, I've been working only with a Sony camera for the last couple of years, and to get into a new ecosystem. I mean, I don't find the menu system any easier than my Sony. I don't know what everybody's talking about. I mean, it's just like a bunch of icons, and you still have to know what the icons mean. And, you know, so I guess whatever you're used to, that's what's easy. I mean, if you have a Sony a6400 for 2-3 years, then the menu system is easy after about 3 weeks. So come on, you know, give me a break with that. You know, the Sony menu system is so difficult. You know, this menu system feels the same to me. What I like is that I have more in this camera. I mean, if I want to get you know, I have an external monitor, but I don't have a Ninja 5. If I had a Ninja, then I could shoot 6K, you know, raw if I want to. So, yeah, this thing is incredibly capable. I'm very grateful for it. But those are the things that kind of piss me off. That button, that thing annoys me, you know. Yeah, the button that switches you from playback to record mode, that just, like, to have it on the other side of the camera, I mean, I know that's being picky, but that shit bothers me a little bit. It's annoying. I'm just saying that. And the screen, you know, I don't love the screen. I do feel more vulnerable with it sticking out like that, and I would at least like to have the option. I know the S1H does that, so I wish I had that. But, you know, oh, and the micro HDMI. Now, because I don't use an external monitor most of the time, that doesn't really make a difference to me. But, you know, of course I wish it was full-size HDMI. But you know, when I do use my external monitor, I put a cage on it, and my HDMI is pretty secure, so I don't feel like I'm going to break it. You know, these people who say they've broken dozens or hundreds of, you know, HDMI cables, I mean, what are you doing? You know, like, I don't understand how you would break hundreds of them. But I'm not saying they haven't, but I can't imagine what I would be doing to break hundreds or dozens of HDMI cables. So, you know, I mean, yeah, micro HDMI sucks. There's no question about it. It's not professional, but I think, you know, they had to do that probably to fit it inside the body because it's smaller than a GH5, which is an advantage, right? So, yeah, I think, anyway, I know we got to finish now, but the lens thing, that's what bothers me more than anything. Like, I wish I had more of a variety of lenses that could turn me away eventually. I could see myself getting frustrated. I mean, and I'm somebody who shoots 95% of his work on 50 millimeters, 24 millimeters. That's it. I could do films with 2 lenses and that's it. That's all I need. You know, I'm not fond of using a zoom lens really, but you know, I don't have a big problem with it, but I like 2 primes. However, if I want, you know, like for example, I have to keep my Sony a6400 for this film because I have a shot where I need a really long reach, like extremely long, like from New Jersey looking at the George Washington Bridge. And so I have the Sony 55-210 zoom lens, and you know, with crop sensor that goes up to like 305 or something like that. I don't have that kind of reach with my Panasonic because I don't want to go rent a lens or go buy, you know, invest in a long lens just for something that I need to do once. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to keep the Sony. And, you know, I'm also using the Sony a lot for still photography, which I haven't really done much in the past, but I find it a really great, awesome camera for photography. So I might just keep it for that, and it's so tiny, you know, it's nice to carry around, but I might sell it, you know, if I feel like I don't need it professionally, because my cell phone takes amazing photos, and I'm not really a professional photographer, I'm a filmmaker, so, you know, having this Panasonic is enough for me. You know, I'm a solo shooter most of the time. I'm not on sets with other people and stuff like that, you know, I'm making narrative work of my own. You know, it's kind of a unique thing that I do, so I don't really need 2 cameras, and you know, I'm shooting in 4K, so I can punch in, so I can have the appearance that I have, you know, 2 cameras working at the same time. So, and I find that when I use 2 angles shooting a film myself, it's really hard to get the framing right where you don't see the other camera. I'm always compromising. Like, I can't get the exact shot that I want anyway. So instead, it's better for me to just do the scene over and over and over again and just put the camera in different places, and then I can cut it together because, you know, I have my dialogue like so down, you know, like when I learn dialogue, that shit is learned, you know what I mean? Like, I own it. And so I could do a scene 50 times and I could put the camera in all kinds of crazy places and then cut it together. So, you know, it doesn't really make a difference to me if I have an extra camera. Just, you know, for me, that's just kind of being lazy for what I do, because I can never get exactly what I want anyway. And I don't just want 2 angles, I want more. So why not just stop, move the camera, do it again, stop, move the camera, do it again, and just make sure the lighting is cool and I'm good, you know? So yeah, I'm very grateful to have it, but those are the things that bother me. So I don't know. You know, I don't think the autofocus is something that would turn me away. Certainly not as good. You know, maybe if I start getting hired to do more documentaries, like I'm supposed to go to Iceland next year and shoot a documentary. I'll be honest with you, like I am thinking like, damn, you know, I should maybe keep my Sony a6400 for that project, because it's going to be a lot of like, you know, a lot of situations where I don't know what's going on. And autofocus might really come in handy in those kind of situations. Although, you know, it doesn't shoot nearly as well in low light. I mean, the dual native ISO on this camera is sick. It's ridiculous. I mean, it looks so good. It's so clean. I mean, I only shoot at ISO 640 and 4000, and that's it. I just try to stay right there no matter what. And that's the other thing. Like, that's why I need a better variety of lenses. And I don't want to spend so much money on lenses. And I know, you know, if you're full frame on Sony, you're spending $2,500 on G Master lenses and stuff. But you know, you can also, if you want, you know, go get a used Zeiss Batis 25mm f2 for $500, and you have like one of the best lenses ever. You know, like I can't do that with this camera. You know, it's very limited what I could do. I know I could adapt Canon lenses and stuff like that, but you can't say I have the same variety that I had with my Sony camera. And you know, I was using an APS-C camera, but I could use full frame lens. I could use any E-mount lenses on that camera. So I think I've talked about that enough. So autofocus, cool. The lens thing bothers me. The screen, I wish it was better. I find it odd that I hardly use the viewfinder anymore, when that was actually one of the main reasons I decided on buying this instead of the FX30. But I also did want to go full frame because it was important to me to have better low light capability and more dynamic range. And even though I know the FX30 is amazing, I'm sure. I mean, I've never touched it, but I'm positive it's insane. I know that this is better for that, specifically for dynamic range and for, you know, low light capability. So anyway, you got any other questions? We cool? I got stuff to do. All right. Yeah. Thank you.